And kind folks out there, welcome to the channel. Today is Third Pillar Thursday. I'm your host DBJ, and on Third Pillar Thursday, guys, I gotta tell you what we do here. Third Pillar Thursday is references the third pillar of tabletop RPGs. That third pillar is exploration, with combat and social interactions being the first and second pillar. Kind of coined by Wizards of the Coast 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but bear with me here. So, um, exploration for me, as your self-appointed third pillars of the tabletop RPG community, is about using the environment in creative and unique and functional ways. It's a place to be used and abused by your players, by your NPCs, and I feel like it is the atrophied muscle in the tabletop RPG arena, and I'm a big proponent of it. And I hear you, P. Not too late for me. Yeah, normally, normally while the show is geared for 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, for me, I tend to come in within a 5-minute period if I can. So, and for those who don't know, just like in the thumbnail, this show is simulcast with the audio over on Discord in Fantasy Grounds College down in a boiler room, and also YouTube and Twitch as well. So, yeah, if one or multiple versions of those, or if you want to, whatever, tune in whatever way you want to if you want to participate live. So, the subject this week are giants, and of course, things larger than what your mind is thinking of. Giants like titans, almost forces of nature, kaiju, mecha. Of course, tomorrow, Future Friday, hell, it's going to be all kaiju mecha. So if you've been looking forward to that part, don't worry about that. We will hit on that. But today, I want to talk about the environment. And while I have been inserting it all, I didn't mean to make that sound dirty. While I have been inserting the environmental things all week long, and of course tomorrow. Yeah, Laura's like, God, that thumbnail, defensive lineman. Yeah, the little kid. There's a if you're not seeing this, there's a thumbnail in the picture with I'm down in the corner, but there's a kid that's a minimum of like a head shorter than his teammate, and both his teammate and himself are just looking out on the field, and I'm just imagining the talk that he's having in his own head, and the talk that happened before he put the uniform on and stuff. Now, it could be just a glutton for punishment, or really good, or he's giving up his mental fu. I'm going to join this team. I don't care. So yeah, it's one of those things. But anyway, environments and giants. So. Yeah, Deadman's like, he's the QB, he's the quarterback. I don't know how he sees over the heads of his own defensive linemen, but whatever. But I like the juxtaposition of this small individual, who apparently is going to play amongst the giants, and that's really cool. He's the 10-year-old halfling of the group, I guess. I don't know. But usually the whatever subject we talk about all week, especially like has to do with World Building Wednesday, of course, when we go to Third Pillar Thursday, it's like, well, how can we use this subject and talk about the environment? Yeah, it's I could see worldwide receiver or safety. Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe he's just a kick-ass kicker. That could be it, but I don't think so. I'm looking at the back of his head. I can see on his brow of his forehead that he's like, hell no, I'm getting in there. I'm getting in it dirty. Yeah. Giants are those games. I don't have a problem with 99% of tabletop role-playing games, but because I am your self-appointed third pillarist, I wish that there were more resources available to talk about the environment and the shifting and changing of the environment. Now, normally we default when you bring up the environment and exploration, the first images that come to people's minds are, dank and dirty dungeons and roaming around and finding clues, and or like rain. Then you go for like rain, snow, wind, um, sandstorms, maybe earthquakes or something, volcanoes, blah blah blah. Um, but Palura, I have no idea where you're going with that. But the environment can change based on the actions and or inactions of the people in it as well. There are man-made locations and such. Any kind of something from a village to a big city to space habitats and starships and such. Anywhere you are, that's where your environment is, and things can change. And when it comes to giants and titanic creatures and such, we've seen this in a lot of our intellectual properties, but a lot of that is not translated over into our tabletop games. Creatures that are, or humanoids that are so big that when they step down on the ground, they cause like a, not just an earthquake, but it's like they cause the earth itself to like ripple and shake. The classic two-handed smash that the Hulk does on the ground, and you'll see the ground just ripple and break, and the concrete and blacktop will just shatter and flip cars and such. There's also you guys. I'm gonna have to permanently put a squirrel in here somewhere. You guys. Um, there's also the idea that when big massive creatures walk around and move around, especially when it comes to your classic giant office buildings with a lot of glass and stuff, and you'll see these giant monsters or creatures just walk around. Godzilla's tail will lash and knock down a random building. A giant's shoulders will just brush past glass that shatters and such. Just their ability to pick up and throw damn near anything, not just tens or dozens of feet, but like acres and miles, even depending on depending on how powerful they are and what size category you're thinking of. Yep, Pelor says, I can't remember Iron Giant, but I'm pretty sure he eats power from power lines. I couldn't Godzilla do that as well? Um, yeah. And okay. Eddie LeBaron, only 5'7", yeah, and 168 pounds. That's pretty um football level. That's pretty small. Of course, with the picture I'm picking, because I'm being very very facetious. I just like the story of that image there and whatnot. Not saying that this kid can't play. I'm just like, that's kind of cool. And believe you me, I'm on his side. And the idea of characters being able to challenge the giants in your world, they could I picture them having an absolutely positively powerful impact on the world itself, because in, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons you have the Tarrasque. In pop culture, you've got Godzilla. I'm trying to think of some of the 50-foot woman, Attack of the 50-foot woman. I'm trying to think of some other like common giants that are in pop culture. I suppose Iron Giant fits in there a bit. Iron Giant's a little bit for me, on the small side of this, but King Kong's another one where the creature is so large that, of course, if they step onto a vehicle, they'll crush it. If they try to climb a building, their hands and feet will just, jam their way into the windows and such, breaking it. Their massive size. If they got King Kong tries to reach up and grab a plane, it's not like the plane will fly away with them. They'll just grab the plane out of the sky, with parachuters, popping out and whatnot. I'm getting a wrong image on that comment, Palora, about just need a slingshot. Then you go get to be a naked statue. Yeah, the David and Goliath story, right? The idea that the the mere presence of this massive creature or this titanic, unstoppable monstrosity is will literally change the landscape, and thereby by changing the landscape, it makes it very difficult to navigate into this world. Um, go to any go to the beginning of any post-apocalyptic event where something massive is storming its way through a city, and you have car accidents and debris falling. Even in a medieval setting, you could have a massive creature whose eyes, glowing red eyes, tower over top of the cloud levels, and when they breathe and when they move, massive winds blow, and rivers divert, and storm surge sweeps over the land, and trees break and shatter. That's another common trope where a big, massive giant's walking through a forest, and the trees break and bend and shatter during their pathway, which always makes me wonder, like, before the massive creature in the woods got there, couldn't you just follow its path from all the trees knocked down? But whatever the case might be. But you get the point, right? Its very breath can blow over small villages or something, or its very steps create cavities in the ground that are so deep that you can actually take cover inside of them, and that might be a thing. Yeah, Plural's like Michelangelo's David. Talk about statues. Statues and of course we talked about constructs before, but the idea of living statues, gargoyles and living statues, massively large living statues, or massively large statues given life through some external force, maybe the gods animated, or the fictional story of the individual who carves a statue that is so lifelike and so beautiful that it comes a lot it comes alive. There's even a divine being in the role-playing game Within the Ring of Fire that is a living statue um, that was carved and with such skill, and the sculptor had such wanted to grant this thing such divine light that it became real. Yeah, the Colossus of Rhodes straddling the a waterway. Talos, the um, the giant that was defeated by opening a hatch on its heel and allowing the molten core of inside of this bronze, I guess bronze or copper or brass statue. If you guys aren't an old grognard like myself, but I remember the old Jason and the Argonauts shows that used to come on weekends. It was like Jason and the Argonauts, Sinbad, and whatnot. And today the effects are terrible, but at the time, man, I used to love the special effects. And there was Jason and the Argonauts trying to go after the Golden Fleece, and they fought Talos, the brass, bronze, or copper statue, and defeated him that way. Yeah, yeah. Pelor says the giant now is the environment, or at least part of it. You know, having if you wanted to make a world in which the point of the world is not to defeat the giants, they just exist in the world. Like I mentioned in previous days where they're so massive that they're literally carrying cities on their backs and such, or maybe they move slowly and deliberately around your world, and humanity, whatever shape you feel humanity is in and around the giants, with cities basically never being in the same place twice, and such. I could imagine that. I could even imagine having a world where the gods clash with each other, and they're they're trying to hit and punch and blast each other with power, and seen from the horizon you could see them um, keeping their footing as they step over mountain ranges and such, while one summons a blast of black necrotic energy, and the other one's got a blast of light or fire in their hands and whatnot, and they're doing battle. And then their the side effect of them being in the world affects the environment that in that way. And maybe the players are first level or whatever game you're playing, they're beginners, and the campaign is to stop them from their battle. Maybe one of the gods is trying to defeat some great evil and is basically losing, and has been losing for, I don't know, a couple hundred years. And maybe the landscape itself is littered with the dead bodies of the gods that have been killed by this great evil, and the PCs, well, humanity itself knows that when the last godling dies, that darkness will dominate the land. And I always imagined making a setting where not just their bodies, but the very items that they had would dot the landscape. Like Pelora brought up, within the Ring of Fire, there's a city that lives in the skull of a godling that was cast down to the planet. I imagine like one of those gladiatorial helmets or something, or maybe Spartan helmet, where people are living inside of it. And I don't mean just like a tent. I'm talking like a city inside of it, or a sword has fallen to the ground and is like it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? It's just a big massive sword with a bird circling around the hilt of the sword, or something like clouds or whatever. Pelora says, just thought about god giants fighting, but moving incredibly slowly, like a month for a punch to land. Oh, that's where my mind is going. I'm not thinking like that they're moving fast, but you just see this slow, deliberate, almost, I don't want to say predictable, but you the pain is coming, and it'll be here in a couple days. You're just waiting for it, and when that punch lands, and the god of justice falls to the ground, you're like, oh, you can see it on the horizon, and all of a sudden, 3 hours later, it's like, boom, it punched in the jaw, and then the god of justice falls back, and his hand slams on the ground, and then all of a sudden there's like a big flash of light from his other hand, and then you realize that for the next 72 hours, the blinding light is so bad that it blots out not just the sun but darkness itself, as he tries to blast his enemy. And then that might be a thing, like, yeah, there's not going to be darkness for like 72 hours or something. Pelora says worshiping them makes them move faster. You might get some problems with that. Record, hey, what's going on? Oh man. Now, Owen says, I remember the awesome anime that was Tenjin Toppa Goren Langan? I know I butchered the pronunciation probably, where the mecha was the size of galaxies. It was both awesome and hilarious. Yeah. Oh, sometimes megastructures themselves, when they get too big, it's like you start scratching your head like, what? What was it? Robotech kind of had that, where the first gen Robotech, where the humanity had left Earth, and they got in these massive ships, and then the ship itself could transform into a humanoid that had where each of the basically battle cruisers of its arms had like like a blast or something like that, and it was kind of crazy, but I still fun. And then it always made you scratch your head like, wait a minute, you don't have to actually transform into a humanoid, city-sized humanoid, just to blast something, but whatever. We love it though. Yeah, we love that stuff. Um, Rickard, hey, Rickard says earthquakes caused by the death throes of giants as the last life energy slowly seeps out of them during the centuries. Thinking dead giants as mountains with death throes after a few decades. Oh no, absolutely, I'm with you on that. Like with it, strange, but coming up with a setting where you have already set forth that your setting will change. And when I say setting, I'm talking about the physical setting, like you're saying, like the death throes of giants are the mountains themselves, could very well have a mountain range appear in a place where there normally wasn't a mountain range. I mean, if one of the gods falls from the sky, or is walking upon the earth and gets blasted and slain by a giant, I don't know, flaming spear. I don't know. The spear touches the sun to gain some of its power, and then one of the gods just like slams it through the chest of one of the gods, and they fall to the earth. Imagine after that god falls to the earth, this basically this permanently blazing flaming spear like a volcano out of its chest, and its body just slams on the ground. And if you were able to look at the map from above, it looks like a humanoid shaped mountain range, and there's like massive landslides and crevices and things where to us we will be walking over like mountainous regions, but it's really like its body um, decomposing and shattering as he slams to the ground. And again, like giants don't need to be biological, especially if you're talking like they are the gods. They don't need to be biological. I mean, you could do that where their very blood seeps into the ground, and you have to navigate through their rib cage and slowly beating heart as a big giant kind of thing. I mean, yeah, you could do that. Right. Omen says, yeah, they could be mechanical. Where who is to say that going through the gods theme here, each of them could be different, right? One of the gods could be made up of millions upon millions of gears and levers, and um, runs on. He's a steampunk styled brass monstrosity or something. And when you're talking megastructure and something alive, you don't need to explain what the gods look like, right? And whatever, maybe this evil, I guess we are making a theme here. So the evil god of the void that's trying to kill all of the other gods, each of them could represent a specificity. So the god of storms might literally be made of, might look humanoid, but it's just storm clouds and winds and electricity and such. The god of earth is just an supermassive earth elemental that gets knocked to the ground with that spear in his chest. And one of them could be a god of technology or innovation or what have you. Maybe one of the new upstarts that has come along, and this new upstart is mechanical, and it's only a mile and a half tall, and gets slammed down to the ground after his arm gets ripped off and thrown into the accursed desert or something, and its head gets crushed and stepped on as its head is pounded into the swamps or something like that in your world. And I could imagine these events could be present tense, not past tense. Um, Omen says, I've been working on a project with colossi, robot gods versus dragons, fleshy horrors, which might apply. And I like the way you worded that, where they're like, the dragons are like fleshy horrors. In classic literature, dragons did not look the way we think of them in classic Dungeons and Dragons with wings and scales and things. A lot of them were called dragons, but they were very related to like demons and monstrosities and such. And the robot gods could be the same could be the same way. They don't have to look humanoid. They could have tank treads. They could have 6 arms and stubby legs. They, yeah. Yeah, Omen says they were more demonic as Satan was in Revelations. Yeah, very much demonic. They were spoken of with multiple eyes and limbs and animalistic features that didn't fit together. Scorpion tails and gorilla arms and insectoid heads and things like that. Yeah. Tesla Ranger, oh, that's right, brings up Guardians of the Galaxy. Nowhere, spelled with a K, nowhere is the severed head of a deceased celestial avatar 2,000 feet tall, home of the mining colony of Exeter. Yes, it was. And as a matter of fact, they also showed an image of one of the celestials in its complete physical form landing on a planetary surface and slamming its staff into the ground, destroying all life on that planet with I think it was the Power Stone. Go a little deep there. Getting a little inside baseball on that one. But yes, you're absolutely right. It was the head of a deceased celestial avatar. And could you steal that? Of course you could steal that. Remember, they were mining its brain matter and its interior systems and such. And I love that idea of mining the brain fluid of a giant celestial creature or something. And the same thing could be done in any game if you want to use the gods, where people are much like I brought up the idea of salt and wounds, which I wish I came up with that idea. I so want to steal that. I so want to be like. Anyway, the whole point was that a Tarrasque is the size of a giant kaiju. It's Godzilla size, that's been attacked, pinned to the ground with harpoons enchanted with arcane power, and an entire community grows up around it. And people are slicing off its meat and harnessing its brain matter, and its blood is seeping into the groundwater, and they're making alchemical concoctions from its internal organs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Now, Deadman brings up the series Raising Dion, currently on Netflix, has an elemental being as the main villain. Yeah, funny how Netflix drops all this crap and doesn't really advertise it. Raising Dion is a very, very simply, I haven't seen it yet, but I know of, it's basically a small, it's a child with special abilities. And, raising the there's always the difficulty of raising a kid, and then finding out the kid has, special powers, like, whatever. Tesla Ranger says, gotta wonder what killed it. Yeah, yeah. No, they never tell you how the head of a celestial got chopped off and thrown out into space, right? But kind of cool. Kind of cool. Yeah, no, they don't. They never did tell you. And no one took. You would think like a Thanos type character would have taken credit for it, but nope. But anyway, Galaxy's really big. Whatever did it probably was just like, you were in my parking space or something, Joseph Keenan says, I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. Yeah, go ahead, futurist, whatever. Bronze Age Mesopotamia was filled with the giant creatures and chimeras. Yeah, I don't think it would be much of a stretch if you wanted to pull from our real world that the statues and images and things that ancient people have constructed are the life-size versions of the real creatures that were there. That would be very interesting, knowing that the statues on Easter Island and the sphinxes and all those kind of things, the statues in and around Japan and China, the Buddhas and the other images in India and everything, multi-armed. That would be sweet. That their sizes and their shapes are the real thing. Now, I don't know. Now, Deadman says Salt and Wounds was stolen from Exalted. Are you really? I don't remember something like that existing in Exalted. Although I don't have all the books, so I can't say that. I don't have all the knowledge. But I mean, it's not a far leap, right? the Tarrasque is a thing that exists in Dungeons and Dragons. The idea that someone could pin it to the ground and use it for its own body parts and stuff isn't much of a leap. So, but yes, most ideas are stolen anyway. Most ideas have already been created. It's how you reframe it. You know what I mean? Pelora says combine brain mining with the effects of the spice melange. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, the the idea of mining the brain matter and being able to distill the brain fluids and matter, even like, I don't know, neural pathways or something, maybe even mining the physical um, networking, almost like biological cables that are able to be used to create the spice melange to give you one or more or very vast psychic abilities. Probably, I would absolutely add a little bit of a side effects table, uh, either a side effects for how often you use it, or using it and having a table that causes random side effects like a chaos sorcerer, right? Where and of course reframe it so that it fits inside of that thing where maybe your brain, you're broadcasting your thoughts to other people, or you fall unconscious or paralyzed. You become blinded by the images you see around you. You become deafened by the voices of all the people, of the cacophony of the internal monologues of the dozens upon dozens of people around you. Maybe things lift up telekinetically in kind of a chaos swirl. Um, I like that kind of things. Yeah, Dead Man says the kaiju was in the Shadowlands, and Omen says take the idea of Space Marines that's been recycled so many times. Yeah, of course, of course. Every story's been done by somebody else who's done somebody else. The only thing is, it's a fine line between someone saying that was stolen and there's an homage to whatever it is. You know what I mean? Um, the idea of a small baby being raised in an alien world after being launched or sent away from its home world is not new. Superman's story is not new. Superman's story is biblical. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's always that, and it's just how you frame it, and this idea of giants affecting and being the giants themselves being the environment is a cool thing. Now I'm going to challenge Tesla and Deadman to find the Dungeons and Dragons module that, and I believe it's basic. Was it basic, expert, champion, immortal, or master or something? Anyway, there's a module in which there's a Dungeons and Dragons adventure that takes place within the body of a massive mechanical humanoid mecha. And the front cover, I believe, is either a gray or a blue, and you see it walking along, knocking over like a mountainside and trees or something. So see if you can find it. I cannot tell you what the title is, but it it came about after Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but it only fit into the BX system. Um, Joseph Keenan says, always wanted to play in a setting that was more ancient Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, creatures and myths familiar, but not the same as in modern pop culture. Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hell, what is, Zevron that joins in and whatnot is a massive fan of Egyptological monsters and creatures and things. Like we brought that up here before about giants having like the heads of jackals and hawks and wolves and things like that. Yeah, hell yeah. I would love I think a setting like that would be pretty interesting. I just kickstarted a successful Kickstarter just happened called Scavenger. Um, I'm a particular fan because I have an association with Marquise Hardis and the other people that worked on it, and it is I don't want to say medieval. It is a post-apocalyptic setting that it's a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons modifier, but all of the cultures in it are non-Eurocentric. And so yeah, that's why I did it. Joseph Keenan says, "Oh, the Day After Ragnarok RPG. I didn't know there was a Day After Ragnarok RPG. Ooh, but that would be a great RPG." Pelora says, "Well, that's just the Jungle Book." Thank you, Dead Man. Let's see if I could find. I'm going to very quickly scan through these while I talk to you guys. The oh, they do have the years down here as well. Good, 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 good. Basic system. No, I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go through all of these because there's a lot of them. I believe it took place in Mystara, but again, Blackmoor, is it? There we go. City of the Gods. Nope, that's not it. City of the Gods is a is an adventure that was based on where it Dungeons and Dragons was very much mixing technology and um, science fiction. And yeah, no, can't find it right now. All right, I got squirreled on that one. Yeah, but I'm gonna keep this up now. Oh, I thought maybe I should add in a squirrel. Now, the other, I want to say, like, the other part of having giants affect the environment is being able to. Where's my squirrel at? There we go. Hey, buddy. Um, the other thing is be able to have a. You would want to have the ability for the player characters to maneuver in and around, to move in and around the environment and maybe predict or shift or change what's about to happen, or at least have the ability to have some sort of foresight before you start dropping the hammer, right? I mean, much like Pelora was kind of along my line where you're saying, like, you know, punches and attacks would take, days, weeks, months to strike, to have it like moving in slow motion on the horizon. And before one of the gods grabs a lightning bolt out the sky and throws it at their enemy, and the PCs have to worry about massive storms or such, you might want to have a way to predict it and have those things be predicted, and then start to mix and match both the natural environment and the unnatural environment caused by the gods. So, for example, the PCs are going through the accursed desert, and of course, on the horizon, everybody can see the giants battling, and then all of a sudden, there's like a snowstorm in, the the desert. There's massive flooding happening in the desert or something of that nature. Like, and then you could just start to reflavor and reskin things. I always bring up necrotic lightning bolts and whatnot. You could have pools of acid in places that they shouldn't be. You could have again, they're merely having handprints and footsteps, and the gods have fallen to the ground could make massive lakes, and much like calderas and impact craters from meteor strikes, and they could fill with life or acid or blood or something like that, walking around in a realm where you just see nothing but indentations in the ground filled with the blood of the gods. That might be pretty nasty. And sure, on one hand, someone's going to say, I'm going to fill up a container with the blood of the gods and drink it later. And others are like, you see that bubbling? Yeah, you might not want to drink that. It's probably pretty acidic, Or it might, hell, how many times have the gods been injured or hurt and they spawn some other form of being? That could also be a thing as well. So, of course, Pelora says, I quite like the idea of plains giants with herds of elephants. that's the other thing too about having having giants in the world, that uh, if the giants exist, how many other things exist on their size scale that become a problem for us? So giants herding, having herds of elephants, for the giants, they might be like sheep or goats or something of that nature, right? And so for them, a giant shepherd with their, massively tall shepherd's hook, getting the elephants to follow along, and elephants are pretty smart, to them might just be sheep, but to human beings, they're just these massive mammoths or whatever, pachyderms or something. The same goes for, a giant with a trained falcon or hawk on their forearm, right? With a big, massive glove and a falcon on their arm, but to humanity, they're a giant rock, an ROC, and this massive rock can fly around and pick up sailing ships and whatnot. But for the giant, it's a messenger bird or a hunting bird or something. You know, when the giant has his hunting dog, what's that hunting dog? Like a Cerberus-sized, massive hellhound or something? Who knows? And I like the idea of things being sized for, or more things being sized for giants as opposed to humanity, and that goes for building materials, pathways. Now we can start talking about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and all the things that, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Jack and the Beanstalk, the idea that the PCs have to navigate in and around tables and chairs, and hell, just trying to go up and down a set of stairs built for giants might require, the proverbial lifting the PC up on your shoulders to get to the next step kind of thing. Uh, Climbing a ladder might be more akin to rock climbing, if you could put your hands and feet inside of the swirls in the wood, or using ropes to climb up to each rung of a ladder. Like I joked around before, the rogue might be able to pick the lock of a chest by literally climbing, sliding themselves into the lock and pushing the tumblers with their hands to try to unlock the chest. The poison dart inside of the lock might be the size of a massive spear or something. You know what I mean? So yeah, I love the idea of navigating in and around a region in which everything is sized to the giants, and the PCs have to deal with the ramifications of that. I'm sure somebody's going to want to take a knife or a fork or a spoon and use that as a pole arm or something, which would be rather funny and rather cool. A rogue could hide in someone's soup and with a little breathing tube or something, But while it sounds ridiculous, and it is rather ridiculous, I do think it would be rather fun to have the PCs running around, uh, making the giant-sized objects that are very normal for the giants to be a severe hazard. A mug of, could a PC drown in a mug of ale or a bowl of soup? If they had a big fight, possibly. Being chased by the house cat or dog as the PCs try to run around and, try to find the closest mouse hole possible. And then there's, of course, massive giant rats inside. I love that idea. Now, Plura says, giants going around draining lakes to drink, but still with the slow movement. It's like, oh, damn, we're going to have a problem in a couple of years. We better move. Yeah. What's the story? Paul Bunyan? Paul Bunyan and his blue ox or something, grabbing both ends of a river and straightening them out and whatnot. Those are, I don't know what the name of those stories were. They were more like a modern, that was like the settling of the United States type of modern day mythology or something, and Paul Bunyan was like part of that. I think it was like colonial era. Yeah, yeah. They were like stories. Yep. Oh, and I'm sure. Well, I'm not. I, I in no way am saying that they are the only stories, right? It's just rare to see modern day folklore. We often think of them as being, hundreds and hundreds, you may, even 1,000 years old, but there are modern day folkloric stories and such. Either real individuals that were just, grown into these large mythological beings, or they might have been stories that were sent around and in the public, maybe through newspaper clippings or stories told to bedtime kids about travelers and such, and a lot of these stories were just fun entertainment as well, and also they were ways to teach young people about the world, and but I mean in a modern setting. Omen says the Aswang was originally a spiritual ethereal creature, but the Spaniards equated it with the European vampire. Then the Americans made them more like skinwalkers or shape-shifting witches. Ah, yeah, thank you, Dead Man. Paul Bunyan. Yeah, and I believe there's a number of stories of Paul Bunyan. I haven't clicked on it yet, but I just remember Paul Bunyan, plaid shirt, big axe, probably a beard, and a blue ox or something. Um, and the way cultures shift around creatures due to their cultural um, connection to them as they encounter them is a great way to change and shift that culture. So, I mean, that creature, I apologize. So the Aswang could have aspects of all three of those, um, like being a European vampire, a skinwalker, and an ethereal creature, or maybe there's three different versions of the same creature too. There's Paul Bunyan. Yeah, yeah, and I think also sometimes um, there's also the idea of people. Sometimes people just like to associate their stories with what's popular at the time. So that's a thing, like kind of like the Cthulhuid mythos, right? The Cthulhuid mythos gets written, and then other writers, because that is the theme of the age, they start writing stories that are in the same milieu and combine them together. Yeah, yeah. Almost as possible. Giants are especially ubiquitous throughout the world. And I didn't know Babe was the name of the blue ox. Yep, Babe. Yeah. Now, we could also thinking about Paul Bunyan and grabbing a river and straightening it out if you don't want to default to a if you don't want to default to a world in which our own physics works, you could have these giants as gods literally constructing or destructing, reformatting the world in and around the one in which you're living. So, could you imagine the gods have decided that they're either going to divide up or shift, or this is the ending of one age and the beginning of another one, and they're going to recreate. They're like, we've decided to make a new age of humanity, but the PCs and the people that live there are the debris. They're the throwaway. They're the detritus of what's to come new that's going to be built on the old. So you could have the gods literally, like I imagine an Egyptological setting in which an architect god like Ta, Ptah, anyway, Ta, or like Anubis or something like that, or Osiris or whatever, just raising their staff in their hands over a region, and then stone blocks start moving and building and reshaping the landscape, and the people were just like, what the hell's going on? Rivers literally flowing and then coming to a complete stop, flowing up against some kind of invisible barrier because the gods are going to place some object or device, or they, we want to, one of the gods is like, I'd like a jungle right here on the edge of this desert. And then there's like a literally a you could stand one side of a hot desert and the other side in a humid jungle or something, or a mountainside or a cliff or whatever. And maybe they start moving the building blocks of the world around as they start moving the world to the shape that they want it. And that format does not need to be logical, right? You don't have to go, well, geologically speaking, mountains are created by the tectonic movement of the earth. You could go, no, the gods said they want a ocean right here, and they literally created a spherical, perfectly spherical lake or something, you know. Yes, Deadman says gods of Egypt did that. Yes, they did. In while the movie isn't the best, it is very much like that, where things are moved and shifted and changed based on the whims of the gods. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a whim, as in like uh, every round roll the dice to see what changes. Not That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is, if the PCs are traveling, let's say they're traveling towards one of the gods is spending years over creating a massive. I'm going to stick with the Egypt theme here. So they're making these massive pyramids or other type of maybe Aztec styled um, monolithic locations, and they're literally stealing the earth from the very ground, turning it into building blocks. Maybe the PCs are traveling along and they have to worry about these stone blocks shifting and moving under their feet. Now, the stone blocks might be very huge, but you might stand on a stone block and it could get lifted in the air and travel through the air. It might, maybe a stone block moves to the left or right, pushing the PCs down into a pit or something that another stone block used to be inside of. Maybe a stone block ends up falling from the sky and getting ready to crush them, and they have to run out of the way. And all the time they're, doing battle with their adversaries while these stone blocks are moving around, and one of the gods is just standing there with their hands and their their ankh or their staff. They're moving these blocks. They could care less what humanity's doing, because they're super massive, right? They are miles or kilometers tall. There's no physical way to harm them at all, but they're building these reshaping the earth in their own image or for a specific plan or something. And Plora, have a great one. I'll see you later. And we will talk. Oh, I'll see you on the flip side. Yes, thank you. Have a cup of tea for me. Now, the the idea of, it can be a little bit daunting to have faceless gods or giants in your world that the PCs cannot go after. So you could establish something where maybe humanity wants to fight back against the gods. I'm calling them gods, but they're basically these massive giants or monsters, and constructing, even in a medieval format, constructing like mecha sized things, whether they are combinations of mechanically gears that move together, activated by magic, whatever kind of power plant they have. The power plant could be a magical element. The power plant could be powered off of ley lines. The power plants could be um, magically endowed individuals that are either enslaved or sacrifice themselves to be in the engine power plant, and with their arms and legs held wide as they blast, pure arcane energy into the furnace of these massive monsters or something. And maybe they're piloted by three or more individuals that have to move the legs and the head and the arms and the weapons, and blasting out pyrokinetics and activating the psychic shields or something, and doing battle with dragons that are literally stepping over and crushing mountainsides and such, which would be its own theme. Pretty difficult, unless you really stretch your imagination and or the gaming mechanics to really embrace the idea of the PCs being part of these like mechanical legions. But yeah, you can do it. Now I'm taking a look at the Aswang. Uh, the Aswang is in the description and taxonomy: the vampire, the viscera sucker, the were-dog, the witch, the ghoul. Some of the behavior and countermeasures. I'm liking this. I like this a lot. I love creatures that have despite the fact that there are multiple cultural influences for good or bad, I think in the long run, I really like the idea. There's pretty good images and a lot of different film, television, literature. I like the idea of a creature having different, I don't know if the word format is correct. Um, having different aspects to it. I often I often thought of um, vampires, like for example, oh, there's even a movie. I didn't know that. I often thought of like vampires not needing to be limited to drinking blood. There could be different tribes or clans or bloodlines of vampires that, you know, they eat flesh, they drain memories, they drain your dreams, they live off of brain matter, you know, whatever the case might be. You could go on getting a little dirty with that, but anyway, guys, we've come to the hour mark. I do have to get out of here. I do have some important errands to run and have to head off to work. Unfortunately today. Oh, the Heraldrix is leaving. Calling the end to this hour. Hey, babe. Love you, baby. Have a great day. Yeah. We've had a. Hopefully, we won't have a. We had a mild spat of like the flu flowing through our household, so hopefully I won't get it. Um, yeah. Good night, Miss DBJ, which is funny because she's heading off to work. That's how much of a time difference there it is with us. Yeah, I'll be heading off to work pretty soon. So anyway, guys, I really appreciate you guys being here. No reason for me to even bother doing these shows unless there are people who are participating, and I gotta love that. So by the way, thank you very much. Let's put this thumbnail back in here because I kind of ended with the squirrel there. Yay! Um, weird. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for getting a little squirrely there. That's our little mascot and whatnot. I really appreciate. Tomorrow is Future Friday, so of course. Definitely got to participate. Future Friday, all kaiju, all mecha. Please come with your A game, your favorite games that you would love for that really incorporate giant robots and monsters. Two of my favorite are Artalsaurian. I'm cheating here. All of the iterations of Artalsaurian, Mechton and Mechton Alpha and all the rest of them, and Tiny Dungeons versions of mechas and monsters. But I know you guys have a crap ton of them, so bring them with you, guys. Thank you for spending your time. Your time is very valuable. I hope you're able to leave with a little bit of change.